The first sign that something was wrong was not dramatic enough to earn panic, which made it far more dangerous. His navigation app calmly instructed him to turn left into a river he had crossed every day for years. He slowed the car, stared at the water reflecting the dim city lights, and muttered, "I knew it. Technology finally got tired of me." The voice from the speakers repeated the instruction with polite insistence, as if drowning were a reasonable lifestyle choice. He turned the wheel away with a sigh, already imagining the customer support chat that would somehow blame him for not understanding basic geography. It didn't stop there. His phone suggested he prepare emotionally instead of setting an alarm. The supermarket scanner refused to recognize bread, but enthusiastically charged him for existential uncertainty. Even his refrigerator displayed a blinking message that read, "You forgot something important," though it refused to clarify what that might be. He stood there for a while, holding a carton of milk, wondering if he had somehow offended every machine in his life at once. He would have ignored all of it, labeled it as a collective glitch, and moved on, if not for the woman. She was standing near the edge of a quiet street, under a flickering light that seemed undecided about its own existence. At first glance, she looked ordinary, calm posture, neutral expression, the kind of face you might forget seconds after seeing it. Then she tilted her head slightly, and the illusion broke. Her ears were too long, elegantly curved, not hidden, not disguised, just present in a way that made denial impossible. He stopped walking without meaning to. "All right," he said under his breath, "either I'm dreaming or the world has officially lost its mind." She looked at him as if she had been expecting that exact sentence. "Statistically," she said, "it is more likely that the world has lost its structural consistency than you are dreaming." He blinked. "That's not comforting." "It is not meant to be," she replied, then paused as if reconsidering. "But I can attempt humor. Humans prefer that." He crossed his arms, studying her with a mixture of suspicion and reluctant curiosity. "You're doing great so far, very reassuring. 10 out of 10, would panic again." For a brief moment, something like confusion flickered across her face. "Your tone suggests sarcasm." "Congratulations," he said. "You've already mastered one of our core communication styles." She nodded, taking that in with surprising seriousness. "Good, that will increase our chances of cooperation." He let out a short laugh, more out of disbelief than amusement. "Cooperation? I don't even know what you are." "I am someone who can help you survive what is coming," she said, her voice steady, almost gentle despite the weight of the words. He glanced around the empty street, half expecting someone to jump out and explain the joke. No one did. The flickering light buzzed faintly above them, like it was struggling to stay present in a reality that no longer fully supported it. "Let me guess," he said, rubbing his forehead. "Aliens, end of the world, I'm somehow involved. Do I at least get a manual?" "I attempted to access your digital manuals," she replied, "but your networks are currently being rewritten." "Rewritten," he repeated, "like a bad script." She considered that. "Yes, but the author does not intend for your kind to remain in the story." He stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. Then he sighed, long and tired, as if he had already accepted something he didn't fully understand. "Okay," he said finally. "Hypothetically, if I believe you, which I absolutely do not, why me?" She stepped a little closer, and for the first time there was something almost human in her expression. Not confidence, not certainty, but a quiet, deliberate trust. "Because," she said, "you did not turn into the river." He didn't answer immediately, mostly because his brain seemed to be negotiating whether to panic, laugh, or politely excuse itself from the situation. Instead, he looked at her ears again, as if they might suddenly retract and reveal this to be an elaborate prank. "They don't go away," she said. "Great," he muttered. "So I'm not hallucinating selectively. That's somehow worse." "I can demonstrate additional evidence," she offered. No, he said quickly, raising a hand. "Let's not escalate the situation with more evidence. I'm already struggling to keep this at a manageable level of weird." She accepted that with a small nod, then glanced at the streetlight above them. It flickered twice, then steadied, then flickered again in a pattern that felt too deliberate to be random. "They are adjusting faster now," she said. "Who is they?" he asked. "The intelligence rewriting your planetary systems." He exhaled slowly. "Of course, that clears everything up. You are using humor to stabilize your stress response," she observed. I'm using humor because the alternative is screaming, he replied. And I feel like that wouldn't be productive for either of us. That is a correct assessment. He started walking, not entirely sure where he was going, but needing movement to feel less trapped in the moment. After a second, she followed, matching his pace with effortless precision. So, he said, gesturing vaguely, this rewriting thing. What does that actually mean? Because my fridge sending me emotional messages is annoying, but not exactly apocalyptic. It is the preliminary phase, she explained. They begin with low-priority systems to test compatibility. Navigation, consumer devices, localized networks. Once adaptation is stable, they proceed to infrastructure. He stopped. Infrastructure as in power grids, water supply, everything that keeps us alive. Yes, he let out a quiet whistle. And here I was complaining about my grocery bill. They walked in silence for a moment, the distant hum of the city feeling thinner than usual, like it was fading at the edges. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and frowned. It says I have 0 contacts, he said, which is impressive, because I definitely had at least 3 people who tolerated me. She glanced at the device. Your communication networks are being reorganized. Personal data is inefficient in its current form. Efficient for what? He asked. For them. He shoved the phone back into his pocket. I don't like them already. That is a reasonable reaction. He glanced sideways at her. You're taking all of this very calmly. I have experienced similar processes before, she said. He stopped again. Before. Yes. And the planets? He asked carefully. She met his gaze without hesitation. They did not remain as they were. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly, as if filing that information under things he would deal with later, preferably never. Okay, he said. So let me summarize. Invisible cosmic editor shows up, decides Earth needs a rewrite, starts with my GPS and my fridge, and eventually moves on to, what, deleting us. That is an oversimplification, she said. But not an incorrect one, he pressed. She hesitated just briefly. No. He took a deep breath, then let it out in a shaky laugh. You know, I always thought if the end of the world came, it would be louder. Maybe some dramatic music, a big speech, at least a warning message that makes sense. She tilted her head. Your refrigerator attempted to warn you. He looked at her, then shook his head, unable to help a small smile. I ignored it because it sounded like a bad therapist. That may have been an error. Yeah, he said softly. I'm starting to get that. They resumed walking, the silence between them no longer empty, but heavy with something unspoken. After a while, he glanced at her again. So, he said, you said you could help me survive. Yes. He shoved his hands into his pockets. And what exactly does that involve? She looked ahead, her expression steady, but there was something else there now, something that felt almost like uncertainty. It involves you trusting me, she said. He let out a quiet breath, half a laugh, half resignation. You're really asking a lot for someone I met 5 minutes ago with very noticeable ears. I am aware, she said. He walked a few more steps, then nodded to himself, as if making a decision he didn't fully understand. All right, he said. I'll trust you. She blinked, clearly not expecting the answer to come so quickly. You will. He shrugged. Honestly, my other options seem worse. At least you're being honest about how bad things are. That's refreshing. For the first time, something like relief crossed her face. That will increase your survival probability, she said. Good, he replied. Because right now, mine feels like it's competing with my toaster. It is, she said. He paused. I was joking. I was not. By the time the city went quiet, it wasn't because people had left, but because the systems they depended on had simply decided to stop making sense. Traffic lights blinked in thoughtful, unnecessary patterns. Elevators opened onto the wrong floors with quiet confidence, and every screen he passed displayed fragments of something that almost looked like language, but felt too precise to belong to humans. This is it, isn't it? He said, stepping over a crosswalk that insisted it was a parking space. Yes, she replied. They are transitioning to full integration. Integration sounds polite, he muttered. I don't trust polite words anymore. She guided him toward a building that had somehow escaped the surrounding chaos, its lights steady, its doors responsive. Inside, the air felt different, like a place that had been temporarily ignored by whatever was rewriting the world. They are not everywhere at once, she said. There are gaps, small ones. And we're hiding in one, he said. That's comforting, like hiding from a storm under a slightly larger umbrella. "It is a temporary measure," she replied. "We will need to act." He leaned against the wall, watching as her fingers moved across a panel that hadn't existed a moment ago. Symbols unfolded under her touch, shifting in ways that made his eyes hurt if he focused too long. "So this is your big plan?" he asked. "Secret alien interface, mysterious symbols, and me standing here pretending I understand any of it." "You are an essential variable," she said. He let out a short laugh. "That's a new one. I've been called many things, but never essential variable." She glanced at him. "Your unpredictability is something they cannot easily model." "That's because I barely model myself," he said. "Half my decisions are based on what feels slightly less terrible at the time." "That is precisely why it may work." He straightened a little, the weight of her words settling in. "So what do I actually do?" She paused, as if choosing her explanation carefully. "They are rewriting systems based on patterns. Logic, efficiency, predictability. If we introduce a contradiction at the right moment, it will force them to recalculate. It will create a delay." "A delay doesn't sound like a victory," he said. "It is enough for me to insert a counter-process," she replied. "A boundary they cannot easily cross." He looked at the shifting symbols, then back at her. "And if we mess it up," she met his gaze, "then there will be no further attempts." He nodded slowly. "All right, no pressure." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet hum of the building felt like a fragile shield against something vast and indifferent pressing in from all sides. "You know," he said suddenly, "a few days ago, my biggest problem was my fridge judging me." She tilted her head. "It was attempting to assist you." "It told me I forgot something important," he said. "Turns out it was right. I just didn't expect it to be this." She studied him, her expression softer now. "You adapted quickly." He shrugged. "I didn't have a choice. Also, you helped, even if you have a very strange way of doing it." "I am still learning," she said. He smiled faintly. "You're doing fine." The symbols on the panel shifted again, faster now, like they were reacting to something approaching. "They are focusing here," she said. "We must proceed." He took a deep breath. "Okay, tell me what to do, and try to keep it simple. Preferably something that doesn't involve me understanding alien math." "You will make a decision that contradicts your previous behavior," she said. "At the exact moment I indicate." He blinked. "That's it." "Yes, that's your master plan?" he asked. "I risk my existence by being inconsistent." "That is an accurate summary." He let out a shaky laugh. "Finally, a skill I've been training for my entire life." The air shifted, subtle but undeniable, like reality itself was paying attention. The lights flickered once, then steadied, but the steadiness felt artificial, forced. "Now," she said. He didn't think. For once, he didn't analyze, didn't hesitate, didn't try to choose the safer option. He simply acted, doing the opposite of what he would have done moments before, trusting something he couldn't see and barely understood. For a second, nothing happened. Then the building trembled, not violently, but with a strange, controlled distortion, as if the world had stuttered. The symbols on the panel collapsed inward, then expanded again, forming a new pattern that felt resistant. She moved quickly, her hands precise, inserting something into the shifting structure that didn't belong, something that held. "It is working," she said, her voice steady but lighter now. The pressure in the air eased just slightly, like a weight had been lifted but not removed. He exhaled, realizing he had been holding his breath. "Please tell me that means we're not about to be erased." "It means they cannot proceed as intended," she said, "not without significant delay." He leaned back against the wall, a tired smile forming. "I'll take delay. Delay sounds beautiful right now." She turned to him, her long ears catching the steady light, no longer something strange, but something familiar. "You chose to trust me," she said. He nodded. "Yeah, turns out fear isn't a great long-term strategy." "No," she agreed. "It is not." He looked around at the building, at the quiet city beyond, at a world that was still there, still uncertain, but no longer helpless. "So what happens now?" he asked. She considered that, then gave a small, almost human smile. "Now we continue." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Of course we do." And as they stepped forward together, into a future that no longer followed predictable patterns, he realized that somewhere along the way, the fear had changed. It hadn't disappeared, but it no longer controlled him. It had been replaced by something quieter, stronger: trust. The world didn't return to normal, which he found oddly comforting. Normal had proven itself unreliable. Instead, it settled into something quieter, like a system learning to breathe again after nearly forgetting how. His phone still behaved strangely, but now it displayed actual contacts alongside occasional philosophical advice. His refrigerator had stopped accusing him of forgetting something important and had downgraded to politely suggesting he drink water. He considered that progress. They're still out there, aren't they? He asked one evening, watching the city lights flicker in patterns that no longer felt threatening, just aware. Yes, she said, they are recalculating. And we're just what? Waiting for them to try again. We are preparing, she replied. He nodded slowly, hands resting on the railing. I used to hate uncertainty. I had plans, routines, backup plans for my backup plans. He let out a small laugh. Now I'm apparently part of a long-term resistance against a cosmic intelligence, and somehow that feels manageable. You have adapted, she said. I had a good teacher, he replied, glancing at her ears as they caught the soft glow of the lights. This time, he didn't notice them as something strange. They were just part of her, like her calm voice, her precise way of thinking, her occasional confusion about why humans enjoyed bad jokes. I still do not understand why you find inconsistency amusing, she said. Because it reminds us we're alive, he answered. Perfect systems don't laugh. She considered that, then nodded. That may be why they fail to anticipate you. Good, he said. I plan to remain very confusing. They stood in silence for a moment, not the heavy silence of before, but something easier, something earned. The world hadn't been saved in a dramatic flash, but it hadn't been erased either. It existed in a fragile balance, held together by something as simple and as complicated as a choice. I need to tell you something, she said. He glanced at her. That usually sounds serious. It is, she replied. The boundary I created will not last indefinitely. They will adapt. When they do, they will look for the source of the disruption. And that would be us, he said. Yes. He nodded, taking that in without flinching. Okay. She watched him carefully. You are not afraid. Oh, I am, he said. I'm just not letting it make my decisions anymore. That didn't work out so well last time. That is significant, she said. He smiled faintly. Yeah. Turns out ignoring fear is different from not feeling it. The lights across the city shifted again, briefly aligning into a pattern that almost resembled the symbols she had used before, then dissolving back into randomness. They are observing, she said. Let them, he replied. Maybe they'll learn something. They will, she said, but so will we. He pushed himself off the railing, stretching slightly. So what's the plan now? More contradictions. More confusing the universe. Yes, she said simply. He laughed. I was born for this. She tilted her head, studying him with that same quiet curiosity he had seen the first night. But now there was something else in it, something deeper. You have changed, she said. Yeah, he admitted. I think I have. I used to avoid things that didn't make sense. Now I'm walking straight into them. He shrugged. Feels like an upgrade. It is, she said. He looked out at the city one last time, then back at her. You know, when I first saw you, I thought my brain had finally given up. And now, she asked. Now I think it was the only thing that didn't, he said. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she stepped forward, and he followed without hesitation. The world ahead wasn't stable, wasn't predictable, and definitely wasn't safe. But it was still theirs, at least for now. And as they walked into it together, he realized something that would have terrified him before. He didn't need it to make sense anymore.